A single shard of ancient bone lay exposed in a rusted dumpster by the estate's rear entrance, its presence shattering the mundane routine of waste disposal. Helena, an anthropologist with a quiet resolve and a lean focus on evidence, inspected the discarded relic. Skeletal fragments did not belong to the recent past. Their edges were worn in a way that suggested they had been subjected to harsh conditions over a prolonged period. But the modern refuse surrounding the site contrasted starkly with the bone's visible age. Therefore, Helena collected each piece carefully, treating the scene as both a crime scene and a historical puzzle that defied conventional records. Helena's preliminary analysis in her modest lab revealed that the fractures on the bones were systematic and consistent with excessive strain. But no known natural process could account for such uniform damage. Therefore, she hypothesized that the remains bore silent testimony to an era when workers were forced into unyielding labor under oppressive conditions. The discovery sent ripples through local authorities, while their initial archived records turned up nothing that could explain how bones ended up being at the estate. An unanticipated tip redirected the investigation. A local worker mentioned an area behind the estate where odd disturbances had been noted in a past. The team widened their search, moving past the obvious spots, and in a neglected corner of the property, buried under thick ivy, they found a narrow passage leading down to an underground chamber. The entrance, however, was beneath debris and modern trash, making its existence uncertain until they followed a tip that led them to it. Therefore, cautiously, Helena, alongside two police officers, descended the slick, moss-covered steps into the earth. In the depths of the underground chamber, the investigators encountered a trove of evidence that shattered the accepted narrative. The chamber was small, its walls lined with relics of a time obscured by official silence. The chamber became the linchpin of the inquiry, a point where physical evidence and historical neglect converged. Helena donned a respirator and signaled the officers to do the same before proceeding further. The investigators pieced together entries that spoke of oppressive labor practices and the draining of human endurance. The documents referenced a forgotten industry tied to the estate's origins, but the ink was faded and brittle and the language archaic. Therefore, Helena carefully photographed each page, knowing digital enhancement would be crucial for deciphering the full extent of the historical atrocities described within. Deeper within the chamber, beyond the scattered documents, lay a series of crude work implements: rusted pickaxes, shattered shackles, and collapsed wooden scaffolding. The implements spoke of tireless work, hardship, and an unrelenting demand that stretched the limits of physical endurance. Helena suspected the chamber served a purpose beyond mere storage, hinting at a desperate attempt to impose order on their unbearable conditions. One officer stumbled upon a small, leather-bound journal, its pages filled with accounting of resources, labor, and output. The journal seemed to be a log of what kept happening to the workers. The entry abruptly changed its tone, descending into a paranoid rant about sabotage and revolt. Therefore, Helena realized the journal may belong to someone in a position of power. As Helena continued sifting through the evidence, she noticed subtle discrepancies between the official estate records and the journal entries. Documents from the estate painted a picture of a benevolent owner and a thriving community, directly contradicting the journal's portrayal of systematic exploitation. The most alarming discrepancy was the complete absence of any record of the industry described in the journal. She suspected an effort to erase the truth from history. Helena noticed a particular section of the wall. It was smoother than the surrounding stone, its surface polished like from constant contact, but there was no discernible door or mechanism. Therefore, Helena asked the officers to bring in a thermal imaging device from the van outside. The thermal imaging device revealed a cavity behind that smooth section of the wall, a concealed room, significantly larger than the main chamber. The temperature within the room was abnormally low, colder than the surrounding earth. Therefore, Helena, bracing herself, instructed the officers to breach the wall. With considerable effort, they dislodged the section of wall, creating an opening into the another room. An icy blast of air swept out, carrying with it a pungent, almost medicinal odor. The room was dark, and the only light came from the officers' flashlights. What they illuminated was far more disturbing than they could have imagined. Therefore, Helena felt a cold dread creep into her bones. The room was filled with rows of primitive cots, each occupied by skeletal remains. The bodies were meticulously arranged, lying face up, their hands clasped over their chests. Each skeleton had a small, identical hole drilled into its skull. Helena understood the chamber was not a workplace, but also a burial ground. The cause of death was far more sinister than simple exhaustion. The medical examiner arrived, his face grim as he examined one of the skulls. The holes were too precise for makeshift tools, suggesting an act of surgical experimentation. The scale of the operation seemed impossibly large, requiring resources and knowledge far beyond what would be expected in that time.